After beating a couple of pretty famous RTS games without losing a unit, I thought to myself, what else could I do to make my life as miserable as possible? And this is where I arrived at. Hi, I'm Amon, and I tried beating StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty with one button, and on brutal difficulty, of course. Now, you might be asking yourself, how the heck are you intending to pull this one off? Well, first of all, let's explain which button I'm going to use. The button to rule them all in my case is the left mouse button. In StarCraft 2, there are only a handful of things you can do with the left mouse button, but they're going to be enough to at least attempt this challenge. Oh, and of course it's possible to map the left mouse button in the settings to do different stuff like attack move, but that's cheating. Whatever I can do normally goes, everything else doesn't. If we start listing the things I can't do in this challenge, we'll be stuck here until tomorrow, so I'm gonna list the few things I actually can do with the left mouse button. I can select my units, I can click on the map, and I can press any button in the command card to issue orders to the selected units, which is going to take literally 84 years to do. Oh, and by the way, I can also press the all army button, but I'm not going to do that. This isn't multiplayer. But that's it. I can literally select my units, give them basic orders after a huge delay, and click on the map. Now let's see if that's gonna be enough to beat the game on Brutal. No build missions are gonna be a huge pain for me in this challenge because they require a lot of microing, which I don't have the ability to do. Thankfully, this level is an exception. Since it's the first level, Blizzard went a bit easier on me here. The only real choice this mission offers is at the end, when you can choose to protect the civilians who are rising up against the enemy, or not. And since you know I'm a good guy who always protects the lives of the innocent...
In chess, the pawns go first.
Help! Somebody save me!
Not today, buddy.
Listen, they deserved it, and you did the right thing. Friends let friends massacre civilians, Jim. I'm proud of you for standing up to them.
Oh no, all civilians died. How horrible. Then I finished the enemy off and I destroyed the main objective. On this level, I have proven that I am capable of building buildings, massing up a bunch of marines and medics, attack moving the enemy base, destroying tanks, and finishing this level using just one button. And this marks the end of the easy missions this campaign has to offer. Oh wait, there is one more. Zero Hour is one of the most boring missions in StarCraft 2, and being a defense mission definitely adds to that. On the mission, I'm capable of saving a couple of squads of infantry that occasionally pop up, but it's their fault that they went scouting all on their own, and I ain't risking my skin to save theirs.
Is under attack.
Commander, this is Matt Horner. Just hold on.
What a terrible loss. A terrible loss of pickup resources. After a while, I told my units to back up to the high ground where I built a bunch of bunkers. Did you know that bunkers have a load button that I can click any unit with to load them into the bunker? Neither did I, but I was forced to use it because there is no other way to load them with one button. And since I had a huge line of bunkers, I legit almost managed to die of boredom. But that might have been because of the mission itself. Anyways, I just turtled hard for the rest of the game and that was it. What a terrible mission. After buying my Stimpack and bunker slots upgrades, we're off to the real missions. The first one of which is a timed mission where I have to destroy the Protoss base before the Zerg do. The initial segment isn't that hard to deal with once I built bunkers to deal with the enemy attack waves. Then I sent a Marauder hit squad to deal with the segment ahead, which required pinpoint precision, which I still had despite being mouse crippled. Then I built a command center and garrisoned it with an SCV to easily reach the secondary objectives and skip past their defenses. In the end, I gathered a bunch of units that I was building throughout the level and sent them to attack. Despite doing it extremely slowly, I even managed to eventually press the Stimpack button to boost my marines. Then I dealt with the enemy base and the stone zealots at the end of the level, and that was it. So far, so good. The next level usually isn't that difficult, but not being able to micro basically at all really amped up the difficulty, so I had to compensate for that with a good strategy. In the beginning, I quickly saved the workers in the north and gathered a couple of Reaper friends, and then I defended my main platform. When I called on my war pigs and marauder mercenaries, who are upgraded with concussive shells now, I was ready to deal with the smallest enemy base to the south. And once that one was gone, I sent all my units on top of the ramp to the east, because that is the only way the enemy can reach me now. And I fortified the position with bunkers, and I was free to mine as much as I want. The biggest problem in this level didn't prove to be the attack waves, but the Brutalisk I need to kill to gain some research points. Because I was unable to micro my units, I decided to attack him with my Reapers, who are extremely fast. And I took most of his health down, but the fight literally took forever. And I didn't even get to kill the guy, but I had to quickly call my units from the bunkers to kill him before I finished the level. Once they finished him off, I sold off all my bunkers, and I had enough resources to win. Well, almost. The goal of this mission is to evacuate civilians. There are two ways one can approach that. Either run a mobile escort and keep the truck safe, and I ain't gonna micro a bunch of marines around the truck, or build a bunch of bunkers at choke points and forget this level exists after that. Needless to say which one I went for, but if you need a hint, it involves fully upgraded bunkers with an additional lab bunker health upgrade. The level was pretty easy. I gathered a bunch of resource pickups around the map, then I built a bunch of bunkers and I escorted the heck out of those pesky civilians. For my last escort, I gathered all my units and stacked them on top of the truck to protect it. GG. There are two ways to beat the next mission. Either harvest a couple of Terrazine sites, or destroy one of the largest bases in the entire campaign. And I was really afraid I was going to have to go for the latter option, since I didn't think there would be a dedicated Harvest Terrazine button in the command card. And there wasn't. But the regular Gather button on the SCVs can do the trick here. Blizzard sure had me covered on this one. Or so I thought. Turns out, this level is a real nightmare when you can't micro your units at all. In the beginning, I was really eager to get out there on the map, so I built a bunch of bunkers on the choke point to the left, and I even destroyed the enemy base in the middle to get some extra resources. In the beginning, I was afraid of conflict, so I let the enemy seal off far away altars, while those closer to me were defended by bunkers in the choke points. Then it was time to go out there and actually start doing stuff. I went after the furthest altar possible first, because the first altar I harvest from doesn't get attacked. Then I went for the one on the northeast, and there were two attack waves after me. But my brave units managed to give their lives so my SCV can survive. Then the attack waves went towards my bunkers, where they were greeted by my defenders. The attack waves kept getting bigger and they started busting through my defenses. But I managed to survive, and in the end there was only one altar left. Let me just say something before I wrap this up. Every time I lost a bunker, I had to lose a couple of actions to actually build it up again. And then I had to lose 3 years of my life to click the load button in the bunker and click on the unit I wanted to enter. And I lost like 20 bunkers on this level. Okay, rant over. Let's finish this.
Finish him!
Before I harvested the last altar, I floated my command center to the bonus objective in the northeast. And then I sent all my remaining units to YOLO the last bonus objective. And then I was ready to bring the last Terrazine canister to my base and end this nightmare. The next level features houses that may or may not contain infested civilians. And I sure know what Blizzard wants me to do when we have such a situation.
Oh no. We're too late. These people have all been infected. They may look fine now, but it's just a matter of time before they turn into the undead. This entire city must be purged.
Please, kill me.
Well, since you said please, thankfully the mission is quite trivial with the right build. The right build here being Reapers, and that's it. I just built bunkers to defend myself from attackers, and then I built Reapers who tear through both enemy buildings and the units they spawn. In the end, I just destroyed a couple of infestors on this level and cleared the rest of it out. I managed to kill a bunch of civilians and easily beat the level. Life really is sweet, even if you can only live it with one button. The next mission is the train mission, and if you don't know what you're doing on this mission, it can be a real nightmare. And if you do, this mission becomes a trivial adventure. And the thing that you need to do is build a bunch of the units the game gives you on this level. Diamondbacks. After I freed the first couple of them on the map, I expanded to the northeast and I easily destroyed the first couple of trains. Things start getting a bit more hairy when the enemy starts building bunkers on the tracks, but it's enough to only take out a couple of them near the base. Then I kept building a bunch of Diamondbacks covered by a couple of Spartan companies to take care of the pesky ravens that kept flying next to the trains. Then a couple of the minion kill teams spawn, but I managed to avoid them and deal with the next two fast trains with my Diamondbacks. And then only one train was left, so I took every single unit that was in my base, including the defenders in the bunkers, and I went all out on the last train, which was enough to take it down. Now is the time for my first choice in the run. I can either side with a Jamaican bro, who is going to stick with me until the end, no matter what, or I can choose a hot girl who is going to use me and who is never going to look at me after that. The choice was obvious. Simp! 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 The Nova mission is actually pretty easy by itself, but it does take some finesse to beat it with one button. The first segment was pretty easy. I just used my dominate ability to take control of the heavy hitters and go through. In the end, I took control of the enemy elite battlecruiser and I destroyed the objective. The first segment was so easy that I went a little bit overboard in the second one. So I was left with a wounded Nova and this small group of units, which became even smaller when I mispositioned one of my tanks. Thankfully, one is enough to get me to the nuke silo. And after I managed to capture the nuke, I made sure to make good use of it by doing what Oppenheimer made it for, killing millions of enemies. In the last segment, I captured an enemy tank, and I used it to get to the nuke silo where I captured another nuke. Then I used my air units to poke the enemy a bit and get me to a good position. And then I made sure Oppenheimer's second bomb kills even more people than the first one. I still wanted to see what the Tosh mission plays like with one button, so I replayed it through the archives. On this mission I have friends and I made damn sure to make good use of them. I took out the first enemy base with the help of my friends, and then I unlocked the drain power for Tosh, which allows me to exchange health from my friends for energy. It don't hurt much. The middle of the map featured a bunch of heavy hitters, so I had to be careful with taking those down. But when I did that, I went for the bonus objective where I liberated the Diamondback parking lot. Then I went to the next enemy base and I took it down with the help of my friends. The next stop was the siege tank parking lot, which I also liberated. In the end, I had to bust through the enemy base and they gave me 4 nukes to do it with. I cleared the front door with my friends and then I went to the top, where I used a cleverly positioned nuke to take out the enemy production. I did the same thing for the other side of the enemy base. Then I went to the middle and nuked it as well. After that, the level was an easy cleanup on aisle 5. The next level needs me to gather a bunch of resources before my enemy does, the random Colonel Orlan. And to do that, I was given vulture bikes. Placing mines on the map with one button might be a pain, but using vultures and marines to attack move to the north enemy base sure wasn't. After that, I beat the 2 south bases with an army of mass infantry, and although it was pretty close towards the end, I managed to be a tiny little bit faster, so I managed to beat him. After I gathered my minerals, I got a bunch of mercenaries and I went for the enemy main base with them. Microing my forces with one button was pretty tough, so I only managed to destroy a part of the base, but then I built a second wave of units and I took it down. When I played this game regularly, I spent as much time as possible avoiding the next level. Why? Because it's pure insanity. The dig wants me to dig myself in with bunkers and siege tanks behind the bunkers, and even then, this level is insanely hard to beat. Why? Because the enemy sends a billion units after me. But I decided I can't afford to micro my units into bunkers and position siege tanks perfectly and stuff like that, so I decided not to build a single bunker or siege tank on the entire level. Instead, I started building ghosts as soon as possible. And the reason why is because they can turn invisible. And for some reason, on this level, the enemy doesn't send any detection whatsoever. So, after the initial defensive segment, which was a bit iffy, I managed to get a bunch of ghosts out, and I placed them on the 2 choke points leading into my base. Before the mission, I bought the upgrade that makes all ghosts permanently cloaked, and now the enemy couldn't do anything about them, just wait for their inevitable demise. In the meantime, I used the drill to manually attack the bonus objectives to capture them, and I built a bunch of missile turrets next to the drill, since the enemy does send occasional airwaves. And the missile turrets were also handy because in the end, the enemy starts attacking with colossi, who can walk over my ghosts. So remember kids, the cheesier mission is always the easier mission. And now it's time for the Protoss missions. If we ignore the fact that Zeratul doesn't shut up on this mission, this is actually one of the more fun missions in this campaign, on a regular playthrough. But when they give you one unit, they sure expect you to fully use it. The very beginning wasn't a huge problem. A couple of jumps and void prisons here and there, and that's it. The second part though. First of all, I can't micro my units at all, so I have to use Zeratul to run past everything. Somehow I managed to do it, and I arrived at an enemy hatchery, which is a bonus objective. But first, I reached the second shrine to fully heal myself. The hatchery was actually pretty hard to take out, and I needed a couple of attempts of going in and out to actually destroy it. I was left with almost no health, and the next segment featured another hatchery. Thankfully, that one was trivial to take out from behind.
They came from behind!
After that, I managed to reach the last segment and I got my health back. There was also a huge fight taking place, but thankfully that one didn't really need a bunch of microing to participate in. There was one hatchery remaining in the end, but that one I also managed to trivially take out. Then I just had to escape, which ended up being quite close, but thankfully my stalkers gave their lives so I could get out. No build missions with one button. Truly a dangerous combo. For the next mission, I had 2 choices. One involved being a nice guy who plays fairly, and the other was being a dirty little cheeser. And let me tell you, I was a really dirty boy. But first things first, I opened the level by capturing the Dark Shrine in the north and using the Dark Templar to capture the Robo Bay to the west. Then the gimmick of this level appears. A nasty hybrid that respawns when killed and becomes even stronger. The first time he appeared on the left side and I took him down. The second time he came, he did so on the right side. Interestingly enough, the hybrid has a wacky ability that allows him to teleport to a random location near him. Also interestingly enough, underneath my base there is a small piece of terrain that can't be reached normally. But that also means that nobody can get out of that piece of terrain should they find themselves in it. See where I'm going with this? It took me a couple of tries, but the hybrid managed to randomly teleport to this piece of terrain, and if I don't bring any units near him after that, he'll be stuck there forever. After the main threat of this level has been eliminated, I destroyed the enemy base to the east, and I built a bunch of Dark Templar and sent them to the objective, which are 3 cells which need to be destroyed. I got them all to low health because the hybrid teleports back once you destroy one of them, so I destroyed them all at the same time to avoid him. The next mission can be played legit, and one can do that for like 40 minutes, or one can speedrun it and beat it within minutes. Since I can't micro my hero on this mission at all, I wasn't able to speedrun it, but I sure used a couple of dirty tricks to make my life a lot easier here. First, I went with Zeratul to the Tendril to the east, and with some good positioning and teleporting, I managed to take it out and escape with my life. Then I went to the south one, which was very easy to take down with my Colossi. Then I built a bunch of units and went to the northwest tendril, which had quite a few defenders, but I had enough units to take them down. Then I used my remaining units to distract the guards of the last tendril, while I teleported my hero on top of it, which marks the end of the mission. This mission is probably my least favorite mission in the entire campaign. Not only is it a defense mission, but I play it with vanilla Protoss units that have no cool abilities whatsoever. The first thing I did was build a forward base to get more resources. This mission is the most micro-intensive defense mission in the whole campaign, because the enemy comes from 3 sides and they expect the player to use units to defend and not build static defense. But that doesn't mean I can't do a little bit of cheesing to make it a bit easier. The first couple of waves don't bring any detection, so I built a couple of Dark Templar and blocked the enemy paths similarly to how I did it on the dig. That bought me enough time to survive until a huge wave of Void Raves arrived, and after that I started spamming them out all the time. The enemy was a bit too aggressive with their attacks, so they destroyed the bonus objective I was supposed to defend. But after that I went onto the platform and built a bunch of static defenses and Void Rays. Then a wave of carriers came to help, and after that a mothership came as well. And that was more than enough to beat this level. After that I killed all my units to get this agony over with as quickly as possible. And that was it. No more Protoss missions.
Praise the Lord!
With the upgrade points I got from the last couple of missions, I bought almost everything on the tech tree except for tech reactors, which I'm going to buy when I get more research points. I prefer them to drop pods because I don't have to waste more APM on building more buildings to gain more production. Next up was the Mobius Factor, a mission where I discovered a similar problem that I had with the bunkers. My units have to be manually loaded into transport ships, one by one, and that sucks. In the beginning I took the first couple of medevacs I got to the first objective and I took it down. Then I started building Hercules because they are more durable and have more space than medevacs. And I sneakily brought a siege breaker behind the second objective, where it was free to take it down without any problems. I decided to go with mech as my composition for this mission, since they take up a lot more space, so I need less actions to fill the whole transport. Then I went with my forces to the middle to take out the Brutalisk. And then I unloaded everything near the last objective and I pushed towards it. I brought so much firepower with me that the enemy never stood a chance. Supernova is a mission that I had a great plan for in advance, but sadly my lack of micro kind of left that execution a bit lacking. First I used my initial Banshees to take care of the enemy forward base, so I don't get harassed from them. Since I'm being followed by a giant wall of fire, it was time to move my buildings towards the next set of mineral fields. Unfortunately, I can't really micro my damaged units behind to save them once I get attacked, so I'm only left with a couple of Banshees and a miserable force of units when I arrived in the middle base. Thankfully I managed to build up a solid force of units, and more importantly, keep most of them alive. Then I built a Hercules to transport all my powerful ground units to the small low ground behind the main objective. I had a bunch of firepower, so the enemy couldn't really touch me. Unfortunately, the enemy realized that and went after my main base. And since I will lose if all my buildings die, I told my buildings to float away to the low ground with the rest of my units. Thankfully a couple of them survived and I managed to land them safely. Then I slowly pushed towards the main objective with my siege tanks and banshees, and I managed to take it down. Next up was the battlecruiser mission. This one generally isn't that difficult if you stick to the tried and proven strategy of spamming out battlecruisers. And that's exactly what I did. I built a couple of bunkers to defend the initial island, and then I expanded onto the second one, and the resources I got there allowed me to build a huge army of BCs. Throughout the level there are a couple of Dark Templar that you can save to gain some research points, so I made sure to save them. You can sleep easy though, they all died before the level ended.
Who called in the fleet?
In the end I had a massive army of BCs and I wanted to use their Yamato cannons to take out the main objective. So I had to manually press the button and press the objective, and do so for every single individual BC, which was a huge pain. But anything that sounds as cool as a
Yamato cannon
is OP, so it was worth it in the end. Next up, we have another choice on our hands. We can either help the good doctor and save her people, or we can... Oh no, my hand slipped.
I'll handle it myself.
You monster!
And now we're gonna have to kill the doctor and a bunch of her civilians as well. How horrible. By the way, I love how Jim turns into a complete asshole on this mission.
I want anyone that leaves the ship wearing a suit. Last thing I need is more people getting infested.
They infest Marines too, brother.
My orders still stand. Shouldn't be a problem for you though, Tychus.
This mission gave me access to Vikings, so I used 2 of them to destroy the first settlement that has basically no defenses, while I sent the last one on an adventure to the Gas Island to collect some pickups. I don't remember ever doing this mission after I unlocked battle cruisers, so I decided that was going to be my composition for this level. I made a nice defensive force and then I started building BCs. And let me tell you, I had a blast. Both figuratively and literally. Turns out, BCs are an unstoppable force of death. And no, I most certainly did not wait for the settlements to get infested, because that's the only way to kill the civilians inside them. Only a truly diabolical war criminal would do that. Soon after, I destroyed the second enemy base and I went north to take out the infestation. And unfortunately, I was too late to save the settlement. And I most certainly did not intentionally target the enemy units around the infestation building to wait for it to be built so I can destroy the colonist buildings. Anyways, after that, the last base was starting to get infested. But since we all know the enemy base is a bigger priority than saving civilians, I destroyed it first. And shockingly and sadly, I was too late to save the final settlement, so I had to wipe everybody out. Yes, I might be smiling right now, but that's because people grieve in different ways. I might have killed the good doctor and her people, but let's see what would have happened if my hand didn't slip and I wasn't forced to kill her. This mission needs me to destroy 3 Nexi before I can destroy the enemy mothership, and for this one I actually went with the unit I unlocked here, the Viking. The first base was easy to take down, then I massed a couple of Vikings, which made the second one easy too. But the last Nexus was a real pain. The enemy has a bunch of defenders, and they also have a couple of High Templar, and when those guys throw a storm at me, all I can do is watch, because it takes an eternity to select my units, click the move button, and click on the map. Thankfully, I had a bunch of units and a couple of science vessels to heal them, so I managed to take the Nexus down. Then I just clicked on the mothership and whoosh, she was gone with the wind. This is the alternative reality that could have happened, but thankfully didn't. Instead, we got a version that is far superior.
You're infested. You're dead already.
Do it.
On the next mission, you unlock Wraiths, the most useless unit in the entire game. So I thought to myself, what flying unit do I know that actually doesn't suck? Ah yes, the BC of course. But I didn't have time to build them for the first attack, so I helped the Odin with a couple of mercenaries. For the second base though, I had a huge wave of BCs and air units ready, so that one was easy. And I did the same thing for the next base. I even destroyed the Loki with one button for a bit of prestige, even though he is my favorite Marvel character. The last base was full of BCs, but I had a dozen of them by then and there was literally nothing they could do to stop me. And in the end, I just watched it burn to ashes. I mean, constituent atoms. The first section of the next mission gave me control of the Odin, which I had to do a sneak attack with. As weird as it sounds that huge thing is capable of surprising anyone. First, I went for the enemy factory base, which is the most dangerous one. I managed to destroy its factories, so they had no production remaining. Then I moved on to the starport base and I proceeded to do the same thing with them. This effectively leaves only the infantry base remaining. Despite playing with one button, this section didn't feel any different than normally. After I got my base, I built a couple of towers and I quickly attacked the infantry base. And I took it down. Then I got a bit greedy and started doing the main objective, despite knowing a huge wave of enemies was going to show up. And they wrecked most of my forces. But I still managed to do the objective. My Odin was really badly damaged, so I called a couple of mules down to heal him up. The wave of enemies showing at the second objective is always quite weak, so I went for that one as well and it was quite easy. The last objective though sends a lot of units, so I attacked it with a bunch of mercenaries, but that one went down just like the rest of them. I honestly thought this mission was going to be one of the hardest ones in the entire campaign. This is a no-build mission where you control Raynor and a bunch of weak units, and I thought I would have to save and load all the time on this level. But turns out, there is nothing I really struggled with on this one. Sure, there were a couple of bumps along the road, but none of it really made my life miserable. The only thing I struggled with a bit was the garage, which I was supposed to take out with the warbot in the section before it. But instead, I used it to destroy the Brutalisk in the section after it. By the way, the game lets me kill civilians on this level, so I took full advantage of it. Yes, my fingers hurt so much after I had to manually tell them to target each civilian, but let me tell you, those ulcers were sure worth it. I had a bunch of units in the second part of the level, so that one wasn't too bad. I made sure to pick up all bonus objectives, and I made my way to the escape ship. In the end, I didn't want to share my loot with the others, so I made sure I was the only survivor. And nobody but me will know what really happened here. The next mission starts us off with two sides that were supposed to be defended individually, but I moved my units closer to the center so I can defend both sides at once, with double the amount of units. Let's try and hold that same thought for the last mission, okay? The gimmick of the mission is that a bunch of units occasionally arrive somewhere on the map, and I need to rescue them and use them to get to 100 supply and then push to the end of the level. But you know how I said I don't want to risk my skin to save allies on 0 hour? Well, the same goes for this mission. If they can't help themselves, I'm not going to do it for them. I don't need soldiers like that in my army. The only thing I do need are the resource pickups that are often found near the locations where they appear. I use those extra resources to buy a bunch of mercenaries, and that managed to get me past 100 supply. Then I built a couple of Hercules, and I put all my units inside them, and I rushed them to the end. Then I dropped them out. And when half a dozen siege tanks I had inside sieged up, nothing was able to get past me. In the end, I just destroyed the last Nidus worm, and that's it. I don't need drop pods, friends, or allies. I can do it all on my own. And now we have another choice in front of us. But unlike the previous two, this one was actually important. I could either play the last level with the enemy having a bunch of air units, or Nidus worms. I chose to take out the air units, so this is the level I get to play. The level itself is quite easy. I have to destroy 4 enemy platforms. After taking out the middle platform, I went for a bunch of battlecruisers again. They easily managed to take out the top platform, and then a huge mean Zerg capital ship arrived, the Leviathan. Turns out that fight is quite easy when you have 150 supply caught in air units. After that, I rushed to destroy the southwest platform, and I quickly got out, cause that one has a bunch of units defending it. I did the same thing for the last platform, though that one was miles easier than the previous one. Although I chose the air level, I wanted to see what it's like to play this level as well. On this level, I only play with these couple of heroes. Thankfully, they are a lot stronger than the average infantry unit, but I still had some issues because of my inability to micro my units properly. Every one of them has an ability and 3 of them need to be targeted manually, which takes a while. The first section was easy to take out, but the second section was quite a bit problematic. The segment in the middle where I have to destroy the Nidus worms that infinitely spawn units took me quite a while to take down when I can't micro my units properly to get to the front and take them down. There I lost most of my units, so the defensive segment that followed was quite tricky. Thankfully, the next segment was easier, and I even managed to rescue a couple of friends that are going to help me with the last boss. And that boss is a queen who hits like a freaking truck. Thankfully I know the gimmick of this fight, so I told my units to start destroying eggs on the other side so the queen can't use them to regen health, while my other guys were distracting her. After that, I managed to take her down. Then I just had to run towards the exit with my units. That one was come and go for a minute, but the 4 people who went into the tunnels came out of the tunnels, and the 20 people who went into the tunnels before me and required rescuing, well, all their corpses remained in the tunnels. And here we go, Orlan, the ultimate defense mission. You know how I turned 2 individual sides into one combined side, the defense from both directions at once? Well, I did the same thing here. On this mission, the setup for each side of this sandwich was 2 bunkers, then a planetary fortress, and then another bunker. The meat of the sandwich were tanks. A lot of tanks. A lot of tanks that have both sides within range, so I can just bring them to the middle of the sandwich, siege them up, and replace them once they inevitably die when Kerrigan comes. Since this is the Nidus version of the level, there were expectedly a lot of Nidus worms coming from everywhere. But thankfully I had a Banshee kill team who played whack-a-mole with the Nidus worms that were popping up throughout the level. On the upside, I upgraded them with multiple upgrades that helped them stay invisible for quite a while. On the downside, the enemy very often brings detection, and if I for some reason looked away or didn't have time to react, I would often have a squad of dead Banshees on my hand, and I would have to replace them. I often found the screen being flooded with Niduses because just too many of them popped up. But thankfully I would have an Energy Nova saved for when such an occasion happens, and that Energy Nova manages to kill most of them. Throughout the level, Kerrigan often graces me with her presence, and she is a literal monster. Thankfully all my tanks are in one place, so they all get to shell her together, and she goes down pretty quickly for the first 2 times she appears. On her 3rd appearance, she gains Razor Swarm, an ability that deals insane damage to all units in an area, similarly to a High Templar Storm. And my ability to micro my units out of said area is almost similar to my ability to micro them out of a storm, almost non-existent. So I lost a bunch of Banshees to her, but those Banshees made a huge sacrifice that allowed for my tanks to take her down. On her next appearance, I got extremely lucky because she used the Razor Swarm on a bunch of useless targets, so I easily took her down. And after that, we enter the last 15% of the timer, and the real insanity starts. Nidus worms start popping left, right, and center, and my Banshees have no chance to take them all down. Unfortunately, I cannot use my artifact to take them down just yet. Another insanely deadly wave of Niduses spawns at the 28-minute mark, and I'm saving my Energy Nova until then. That means I had to somehow try and keep my deer head for the next couple of minutes. Soon after, salvation appeared in form of this sentence.
Warning, seismic disturbance detected. Nidus worm inbound.
And I was able to use my artifact and clear half of the map of Niduses. After that, Kerrigan appeared again, but I used all my forces, including my workers, to surround the artifact. And despite it being at insanely low health and surrounded by a bunch of Niduses, I managed to defend it. And I actually did it. I beat freaking Orlan with 1 button. In fact, I beat the whole Wings of Liberty campaign with 1 button. And on brutal difficulty no less. And then people say StarCraft 2 is a difficult game.
Wipe that smirk off your face!
My next plan is to do the same thing with Heart of the Swarm. Thankfully, that campaign is far easier than Wings of Liberty. And I mean, it's not like there's a hero on literally every single level that needs to be microed.
Now, I'm mad.
Oh no.